Hey, it's been a while, but the Armchair Express podcast is back. I'm Matt Martinez, head writer for the Pittsburgh Steelers for ArmchairAllAmericans.com, filling in again for Daniel Nera, our normal host. He couldn't be with us. Joined with me are Will LaFiandra,
Hello, I'm back.
as well as Kaylor Felton.
Hey guys, Caleb Feltman, writer for the Chicago Bears. I'm surprised Nera is still referred to as the normal host. I mean, it's over here. How long does he keep that title?
Well, I hope he gets it back, man. Also with us is Christian Babcock.
How's it going, people? It's been a while, so good to talk to you again.
And we're going to be joined real quickly by Richard Cano. He's running a bit late. Also with us again is my other co-host from our other podcast, the Dash to the Draft podcast, Grant Baker.
Hey guys, Grant here. I cover the NFL draft and the Oakland Raiders.
Yep. And speaking of the NFL draft, the 2017 one happened last weekend.
It did? Really? Wow.
Yeah, no, it was super fun. I know.
Wait, it really happened? It wasn't a dream? It wasn't a nightmare?
Yeah, your team sucks. You can't redo it. Sorry, Kaylor.
It's it's kind of surreal. You know, you spend so much time building up to that one moment, and then it's gone in a weekend.
Yeah.
But
And you're left with Mitchell Trubisky and Adam Shaheen as your first two picks. It's really a sad day if you think about it.
And that's kind of what I wanted to start this off with, especially because the actual draft started out with it. It kind of started out with a bang. It started with the 49ers trading back with the Chicago Bears, with the Bears taking Mitchell Trubisky. And it's something that me and Grant talked about in Dash to the Draft. But since we have an actual Bears writer on, I wanted to go ahead and get his opinion on it.
You know, let's make sure we give credit to Cleveland for not pulling a Cleveland and ruining the first pick. I thought they got that one right. After that, it was pretty much. I mean, I don't want to say it was a disaster. Really, it's easy to say that this pick was really botched and that they traded away too much to get Mitchell Trubisky, but you have to think about it from the perspective that the Chicago Bears felt like Mitch Trubisky was their franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. And if that's the case, then you'd trade an entire draft to get a guy like, I mean, if you look at the number one overall quarterbacks like Matt Ryan and Cam Newton isn't exactly a 10-year franchise quarterback, but the point is, if you have a guy, the opportunity to get a guy that can take you from the second overall pick to the 32nd overall pick, then you'd give away a draft to get him. The issue is nobody thinks that Mitch Trubisky is that kind of guy. I didn't think he was the best quarterback in the draft. I know Grant didn't think he was the best quarterback in the draft. So if you've seen any of the fan reactions from Chicago, there's very few people who are really happy with this. Initially, I wasn't very happy. I'm starting to think that in a draft that, I mean, honestly, I didn't think it had a whole lot of talent. There were a lot of question marks. Guys like McCaffrey and Fournette and Peppers, you know, people that we weren't really 100% sure if they were going to be able to transition to the NFL. I'm excited to see how Trubisky does. I think he's going to end up backing up Glennon, like a lot of rookie quarterbacks in this draft are going to end up being backups for a year. But yeah, initially wasn't too happy, but really the thing that I was most disappointed with was if we're going to draft a quarterback and try to give up a lot to get a quarterback, why would we do it this year? Because as far as I know, next year is going to be a spectacular draft for quarterbacks. And I wanted to ask Grant Baker about that because I know he's really looked into some of the 2018 prospects and has a good idea of what will be available to us. And I mean, as far as it looks right now, we're going to be right back in the mix for a top 3 pick and have a good shot at a quarterback next year. So, Grant, what do you think about top quarterbacks next season? Do you think it was really worth trying to go after Mitch Trubisky when there's quarterbacks available next season?
Well, I don't think you can ever count on a player in a upcoming draft to save your franchise, just because in football that changes so frequently. Like, for example, Christian Hackenberg would have been the guy that you would have tanked for a couple of years ago. Obviously, he did not perform as well later on in his college career, and he is yet to take a snap for the New York Jets. However, on your point about 2018 quarterbacks, it definitely looks like a better class right now than the class we just had with the 2017 draft. There are two main guys that I really like. Sam Darnold of USC. He's got an elongated release, which I don't like because that gives corners time to jump on his routes. A good example of that would be Blake Bortles this past year, whenever his mechanics kind of fell apart and he started dropping the ball below his waist. That elongated delivery really hurt his ability to throw the football. He can throw on the run really well down the field. I need to watch more tape on him. Like I said, I've been covering the 2017 draft, and I haven't had a lot of time to watch 2018 tape yet. And obviously, they haven't played their final season yet, so I don't have that tape either. The other guy that I really like that isn't getting as much hype as Darnold, but people are starting to talk about, is Josh Allen from Wyoming. Prototypical size, really good athlete, really like his arm, good accuracy. He plays in an NFL pro-style system where he has command of the line of scrimmage. He makes all the calls. He commands that offense, and it's just a really rare thing to see in the modern game. I don't really have any big flaws on him yet. He doesn't play with a lot of talent around him, and sometimes that can kind of hurt him. But those two guys, I think there's a really good chance they're both top 5 picks next year if they both come out.
Yeah, I think just based on the number of possible NFL-ready prospects next year, I think Ryan Pace really risked his job, and he put his job on the line trying to take Trubisky, because if any of these guys in the next 3 years, if any of the guys that you just talked about are better than Trubisky, then Ryan Pace is going to be out.
The other thing is, you mentioned how they thought that Trubisky was their guy. If they thought Trubisky was their guy, why didn't John Fox know they were going to take him an hour before the draft?
Yeah.
Right? That to me just screams that they made a knee-jerk reaction. And to me, it's the general manager saying, I have a hot seat. If I take this young quarterback, at least I'll get a couple of years to see how this quarterback pans out before I get fired. That's what it says to me, which is just unethical and the wrong football move for that franchise. Because you've had some good young players. I really like Leonard Floyd, who you drafted in the first round last year. I think he's going to be a stud this year and break out. But this draft might really set you back.
That was my biggest problem with the pick, is John Fox not even knowing about him. That's just not how you should be running a franchise.
Yeah, no doubt. The knee-jerk reaction thing is something that there's been a lot of speculation about. The fact that there were no reports of the 49ers looking to trade that pick, and the 49ers probably weren't going to take Trubisky at 2, so we could have just gotten him at 3. There's a lot that we don't know and that we won't ever know about what kind of movement they had to make and what they were thinking at the time. But, we're going to know in 2 years when we're looking for a new GM and head coach.
Yeah, it's it's one of those hope for the best situations. All right, so let's move on. Now that the draft is over, let's try and kind of have a group discussion on who we think what rookies are going to have the biggest impact in their first year for their teams. And I personally think it's going to be Leonard Fournette, just because he's going to be able to take pressure off of Blake Bortles. And if they can fix Blake Bortles a little bit, I think that could do wonders for the Jaguars, because they already have a pretty stacked team.
Well, I think Fournette's kind of the obvious pick when it comes to guys that are going to break out in year one or have big rookie years. Not only because he's such a talented prospect, but because running back is usually the position that's most successful in year one, whereas quarterbacks, defensive front seven, offensive linemen, those guys take a little while to develop before they're really ready for the league. So I think if you're looking for year one production, you really want to look at the running back position, and your main 2 guys are Fournette and Christian McCaffrey in Carolina.
Grant, last year we had a draft that gave us Jalen Ramsey and Eli Apple, I think both in the top 10, and I thought they both were fantastic on the perimeter for their teams. We had, I think, 8 of the top 12, or maybe 8 of the top 10 were either quarterbacks or other skill players, wide receivers, safeties. and I think, cornerback in there, Marshawn Lattimore. Because of the lack of offensive line talent, do you think that we're going to see just a lot more skilled players, skill rookies like Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott kind of taking over the league?
Well, I think that some of those picks in the top 12 are kind of reaches. I really liked Corey Davis, so I had him mocked to Tennessee in several of the mocks that I did. So I was really excited when they took him. They need a number one threat, so I think he could have a big year. Obviously, being Mariota's number one target and having that powerful running game that would distract defenses. Mike Williams, I'm worried about his ability to get open because he's not a very good route runner. He wasn't at Clemson. He just kind of won with pure physical talent and having just incredible hands. And then John Ross. A lot of teams took John Ross off their board because of injury concerns. So that could be a big problem for Cincinnati. And they already have downfield threats. I thought the Ross pick at 9 was a real big reach for them. But I think Davis absolutely could be a big deal. And then Fournette and McCaffrey. And then as far as quarterbacks, you had Trubisky taken 2nd overall. I think they're going to want Mike Glennon to play as much of this season as possible. Mitchell Trubisky went to Gruden's quarterback camp and didn't know what a hard count was. So I'm really not very confident in his ability to walk into a huddle on day one and lead an offense. And then Mahomes, there's Alex Smith there. Obviously, that's a developmental pick. Watson at 12, Deshaun Watson at 12 to Houston is the really interesting quarterback because clearly Houston has that incredible defense with J.J. Watt, with Jadeveon Clowney, with Whitney Merciless, all those really impressive guys, top 5 defense in the NFL arguably. And they've got perimeter weapons. You've got DeAndre Hopkins. You've got Lamar Miller. You've got some receivers they picked last year, Braxton Miller and Will Fuller. They needed the quarterback. I mean, they went to the second round of the playoffs last year with Tom Savage at quarterback. So I think Watson has a chance to start very early and produce very early for Houston. Although I do think he needs work learning an NFL offense as well.
Yeah.
In addition to Fournette, I think kind of on the opposite end, on the bad end of impact, I think you can make a case for Malik McDowell, not because he'll be a bad player, because McDowell is one of the most talented players in this draft. I think it's
top 15 talent, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Seattle's complete negligence of the offensive line is going to bite him in the butt. Finally, it's going to, because last year Russell Wilson was running for his life constantly. They had a terrible offensive line. Leading up to the draft, everyone was like, they need to take an offensive lineman. And I think it's going to bite them in the butt this season because they could have taken Cam Robinson. They could have taken Ryan Ramczyk. They could have taken a number of different guys, and they just completely avoided the offensive line until, what was it, like, who did
I don't remember. They passed on Forrest Lamp as well. I know Seattle last year. Say again, Will?
Sorry, they took Ethan Pochik, I believe.
Which is a solid pick.
Who's a center, though? Like, he's a center guy. And, like,
He can play anywhere from left guard to right tackle. He's not just a center.
Yeah,
I think they're going to try to play him a right tackle. I don't know how that's going to work.
He was announced as a tackle. But, like, why does Seattle hate taking more polished tackles? Like, they always want to try and develop guys.
There weren't any polished tackles in this draft, to be honest with you. The best one was Garrett Bowles. He's 25. He's got a weird background. He's really raw. I mean, he's athletic and he likes to hit people, but he's less than 300 pounds. And then you got Ryan Ramczyk, who I'm sure Babcock loves because he's from Wisconsin, who is like a 6 out of 10 in every single attribute an offensive tackle can have, but he's not like super good in anything. So like he's got average feet, average power, solid technique. He's just like an 8-year right tackle that has a fine career that you never really think about. So I'm not too worried about them passing on tackles there, but they did spend the least on an offensive line out of any team this last season, and they did not help themselves there. So Russell Wilson's going to continue to run for his life, and that running game is going to continue to be very suspect, and I think it's going to cost them whenever it comes down to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about Ramczyk for a minute, I don't spend as much time or not as experienced as, looking at prospects as some of you guys. But what I did do is I watched pretty much every Wisconsin football game. Again, with the disclaimer that I'm not that good at evaluating talent. Ramczyk never did anything that made me like, oh my goodness. And I especially remember oftentimes in the past when Wisconsin developed these really impressive offensive line prospects, the TV guys would usually take a minute or two on certain plays and be like, look at this incredible blocking. And they did that maybe once. I wasn't that impressed with. So I hope he does well, of course. I'm going to support him because he's a Wisconsin guy, but I agree that he's not an elite offensive line prospect by any means.
Yeah, when it comes
Just wait a few years, though. There's going to be a few more from Wisconsin.
Yeah, when it comes to Seattle's offensive line problems, they didn't time it very well because, we've mentioned a couple times that this wasn't a great offensive line draft. So if they were looking to kind of rebuild their offensive line, I think Pocic is a good start, but they're going to need a couple years if they really want to get young on the offensive line with talent.
Okay.
I mean, as we all know, they took Ifedi last year in the first round, and they actually traded up to decent rate, I believe, from 31 to 26. And that
they traded back from 26 to 31, so that because Denver wanted to take Paxton Lynch.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, and they took Ifedi, and that didn't really work out. And I heard they're trying to move him possibly to right tackle. I just don't know how
he was pretty raw when he came out. And the A&M tackles have not really lived up to their billing in the last couple of years in the NFL.
Yeah, I just worry that they're going to try to play Pocic and now maybe Ifedi out of position. That's just going to, Russell Wilson's they're not doing him any favors really, which is obviously not good.
Okay, is there anyone else you think are going to have? Who else do you guys think are going to have the biggest impact this year?
Well, we really haven't talked about the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean Garrett, obviously.
Right, Myles Garrett. And teams won't be able to double him as much as they want to because Emmanuel Ogbah across from him is also a very good player that the Browns got last year. So they've got a really, really nice young defensive front building there in Cleveland, which I'm really impressed with.
Now, Grant, let me ask you something. When I was watching the draft, a lot of people were ranting about how Myles Garrett doesn't show the necessary effort to succeed in the NFL. Do you see that at all?
Here's the problem with that. Because all the collegiate games now, all the collegiate offenses are shifting to more of the spread, wide open, hurry up offenses, which means that you run a lot more plays now than you would have done 15 to 20 years ago. You can make the exact argument that was made about Myles Garrett on every single player that comes out. The only difference is these media people that don't actually cover the draft, that just do radio shows, watched like one or two of his games and are like, oh, he's not doing something every play. Why is he being looked at as a dominant defensive end? It's because he ran 75 plays on defense. And when you're running a play every 15 seconds, it's really hard to give maximum effort, especially when you're being double teamed and you've got a hurt ankle. So no, I'm not worried about it at all. If you saw his 2015 tape, whenever he was a sophomore and he was not injured, teams were throwing 3 blockers at him and he was still decimating their entire game plan. Specifically the bowl game against Arizona State at the end of the 2015 season. Arizona State would literally send the tackle, the guard, and a running back to triple team Garrett on every play, and he was still dominating them. I'm not worried about his effort whatsoever. It's a red herring. He's going to be a great player in the NFL.
Do you think he still possesses elite size, athleticism, and motor?
Well, I'll tell you this much. I'm a big dude, right? I'm about 6'5", 260 pounds. I saw him at media days in June, and I looked at him and said, that is a very large man. So he has size. As far as speed goes and athletic ability, he's 272 pounds, and he verticaled 41 inches, and he ran 4.64, I believe, at the combine. So I think that answers your question right there.
I mean, I could do that, but okay.
Right, sure.
Real quick, we just got joined by Carson Schubert, our Vikings writer. What's up, Carson?
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, no, you're good.
Perfect.
Okay, we're actually just now moving on.
Oh, can I just add one last thing, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Marshawn Lattimore, obviously, if his what's it called? I know he's been battling some sort of soft tissue issues.
Hamstring.
But hamstring, yeah, that's what it was. But if he can get beyond that, obviously he's in a good position now to make an impact with the Saints and their secondary, and possibly also O.J. Howard as another weapon for Jameis Winston. Obviously, they had Cameron Brate last year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Howard put up some good numbers this year.
I'm excited. I got so excited for Jameis Winston when OJ Howard fell.
He was the, I think, 8th or 9th prospect on my board, and they got him at 19. So awesome value there.
Yeah, and now
Good blocker, great receiver. He's gonna be great in Tampa.
it's going to be awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on real quick to. I have off-season winners, off-season losers, and then I have offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year. Do you guys just want to switch that?
Yeah,
Whatever works, dude.
I'd be up for talking defensive rookie of the year. I was just trying to look to see when the last time the first overall pick was the rookie of the year. We had Cam Newton, Sam Bradford, 2010. Both were rookies of the year as number 1 overall picks. But I don't think we've had a defensive player taken first overall to win defensive rookie of the year in a long, long time. Do you think Myles Garrett has a chance?
Oh, he's definitely got a chance, and he'll certainly have that spotlight.
Yeah.
I think he could. The problem is edge rushers in the modern NFL, even the elite guys like Von Miller, Khalil Mack, Vic Beasley, look at their production in year 1 and then look at their production in year 2. Usually year 1, it's like 4 or 5, maybe 6 sacks, and then year 2, it jumps up to 15.
Yeah.
I mean, they just kind of piece it together in year 2. So I don't necessarily have a massive expectation for him in year 1. I think, Bosa last year was phenomenal, despite only playing in 12 games. But that's because he was more technically sound and not necessarily an athletic, explosive project like Garrett is. I'd say project. He's more raw than Bosa was when he came out. Bosa was more pro-ready. But Garrett has a much, much higher upside. So maybe not year 1 just because edge rusher not as frequently wins that award. Usually goes to a linebacker or a defensive back from what I've seen. I think they're more likely to win it. So maybe Marshawn Lattimore if he has a nice season in New Orleans and racks up some interceptions.
Okay.
I think Lattimore, Hooker, Humphrey, those DBs.
Malik Hooker. Yeah, that was a great pick for Indianapolis.
Yeah, for sure.
Jamal
Yeah,
Adams,
no, so
maybe.
since
The Jets,
we've already
depending on
kind of. Oh, wait, what were you saying, Will?
I said Jamal Adams, maybe if the Jets defense can turn it around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of already started. Obviously, Myles Garrett. We heard Malik Hooker. Will, you just threw out Jamal Adams. Are these guys like defensive rookie of the year candidate guys? Or like who do you guys really see as being a defensive rookie of the year?
I think
Well,
I think Adams or Garrett really could be, honestly. I think Garrett has the opportunity to dominate in Cleveland when it might be tough though because I don't think they have a lot of pass rushers. I'm not a Cleveland Browns expert at all, but I don't think they do, so it could be pretty easy to double team Garrett. But Jamal Adams, I think, definitely has potential for that.
Well, Cleveland drafted Carl Nassib and Emmanuel Ogbah last year, and they both had really good rookie years. And then you've got Danny Shelton, that nose tackle, who's not really a pass rusher, but he kind of controls the middle really well in that defense. So I think that teams will definitely scheme for him, but they'll also give a lot of attention to Ogbah across from him, which is really going to help him.
I think Malik Hooker would be a pretty good candidate, to be honest. Just because he's got such good range, and like teams have gotten away with throwing on the Colts for so long. I think it's going to set him up to get a ton of interceptions, and I know that a lot of interceptions is typically what's going to lead to a lot of praise. So even if he has a down year but gets a lot of picks, I think he's a really good candidate.
I think another kid that's got a good chance got some pretty high praise in the draft, T.J. Watt with the Steelers. I think he's in a good organization defensively. Carson, do you have something you want to say about him?
Well, I think a lot of people are overrating him just because of who his brother is.
No one's overrating him.
Everyone's overrating him. He's really raw.
Yeah.
He is raw.
Not only that, though, but obviously his brother I don't think he's going to be as good as his brother. Maybe he'll be all right. Maybe he'll be a solid player, but he's not going to be J.J. Watt. I can tell you that much.
His upside is Clay Matthews, kind of a guy that can play outside or inside linebacker in a 3-4 and do multiple things really well as a really good athlete, but he is pretty raw. I think he was just a one-year starter at Wisconsin, although I could be completely wrong about that.
Oh, he started for he was an offensive player up until college, and then he was on the defensive line, and then he switched to kind of an edge position, and he was only there for like a year and a half, and he was hurt. I think he played like the first half of the season, then he got hurt.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
You mean
he's
this
really
past
only a
season?
year and a half. Huh?
This past season?
No, he was healthy this past season. It was the year before.
No, yeah, I think the starting for 1 year thing is accurate.
Yeah. He's really raw. He's got to beat out James Harrison, who, just turned 39 today. So
Isn't James Harrison on the D-line?
he's an outside linebacker.
Mhm.
Okay.
He and Terrence Newman are right at that same age there, Matthew.
Yeah, but Terrence Newman wasn't pushing 1,400 pounds on the sled.
That was ridiculous.
True.
James Harrison's a man.
He is a man.
I saw that video, but I mean, of course, it looks crazy. But as somebody that has only weighed about 150 pounds his whole life, I don't know how heavy 1,400 pounds is. Grant, I know you're a bigger guy. Can you describe to us what pushing a 1,400 pound sled would be like?
That's like several lions worth of weight. Is that a good metric?
Several lions?
Yeah. That's half a ton. A literal ton is 2,000 pounds, right? So that's 75% of 1 ton, and he's pushing it on a football field.
Yeah. When you compare it to a handful of lions, that's much easier to grasp.
Right.
So,
And it's like probably half a dozen lions. I don't know. I'm not a zoologist, so.
We're going to switch over from the imperial system to the lion system.
There you go. Speaking of the Lions, Jared Davis at 21. What a reach, am I right? What a segue that was.
Slightly, but for what they want. They targeted, who was the other linebacker that they took?
Son Reddick?
No,
The Lions took?
Yeah, Reeves Maven. And
I hated this tape.
Both of those guys, it's pretty clear that that they were targeting those kind of rangy pass cover type linebackers. So it was a reach, but I understand where they're coming from.
I want to get Taylor's opinion on something here. I thought that the Lions and the Packers both passing on Reuben Foster. I thought that was huge because could have definitely been either one of those teams could have gotten him, and I did not like Jared Davis over him. I think the Lions made a mistake in drafting him instead of Reuben Foster, and I'm really glad the Packers didn't draft him. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Kaler, but I thought both of those teams could have used Reuben Foster tremendously.
Yeah, Reuben Foster is fantastic at Alabama, and I know he's got some injury issues, some off-the-field issues. The thing that concerned me the most about Reuben Foster is whenever he spoke in an interview after games, you would sit there and look at him with your mouth would be open, like, how can this guy be getting through college? Because, with no disrespect to Reuben Foster, that kind of thing would scare me in trying to, cultivate an NFL mind at linebacker. I can understand taking him with the physical presence that he can be in your defense, but it would be a project.
The main reason he slid, by the way, is not off the field concerns. Well, not character concerns. It's his shoulder. A lot of teams say that his shoulder was a big deal, and he might never be very effective in the NFL because of it. So just want to air that out. I know a lot of teams really frustrated that they didn't take Foster.
And you said the Packers and the Lions could really use Reuben Foster. I think every team could have used a Reuben Foster.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it was
Definitely.
so surprising that he slid so far.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with you, Carson, as an NFC North writer at Chicago and with you in Minnesota. It'll be good to not see him every, 4 times a year, twice a year, however many times he'd end up playing us.
Yeah.
But Green Bay's got some good guys behind the defensive line, so it's not going to be any more comforting going to Lambeau. But without Reuben Foster there for the next 6 years would be comforting.
Yeah,
How
I know.
upset must the go ahead, Carson? Sorry.
I know that Green Bay is pretty happy with their draft, and a lot of people have given them A's, but I think just for passing on Reuben Foster, I would drop their grade to a B or B plus, because I feel like they really could have used him instead of whoever they have there, that linebacker from Stanford and an Iowa State, I think Jake Ryan or something like that. Those guys are garbage. I mean, get Reuben
Inside
Foster.
linebacker. People always overrate the value of inside linebackers. The Packers had a phenomenal draft. They got Kevin King, who is a very, very good outside corner, which is what they needed in the first round. In the second round, they come back and get Josh Jones, physical, hard-hitting safety that can really solidify the back of their defense. Third round, Montravius Adams, awesome value pick, the nose tackle out of Auburn. And then you get Vince Beagle out of Wisconsin. I think he can be a really good player. And Jamal Williams out of BYU, the running back. Very, very good running back for what they want to do. Patient power back that can make a guy miss, but also run downhill and take people out. So I think the Packers had a great draft. Like I said, I think I saw a report that said teams believe Foster may never play a down in the league. Like that's the ultimate waste of a first-round pick right there. I mean, at least Jamarcus Russell took a few snaps.
As someone, I mean, I know, Grant, you're a Raiders fan too, but as someone who grew up and kind of found his sports consciousness at around the time Jamarcus Russell was playing for the Raiders, I think it would have been smarter for him not to play a snap, because the amount of pure destruction that he caused the Raiders was something that I've rarely seen before.
Imagine being an Arkansas fan and seeing Darren McFadden go to the Raiders and thinking, all right, yeah, this guy was dominant in Arkansas. He's going to be dominant at the pros. And for him to be so good but have a garbage offensive line and the worst quarterback in the NFL and not be able to produce and be injured all the time. It was wonderful. It really was.
Was he there at that time too?
He was drafted in 2006, the year before Russell.
Okay, I was like 10, so
Yeah.
2006 I was 8. Wow.
Solid math.
Carson, I think in our group messages you mentioned that what was it when we asked you about the Vikings first pick? You liked the position, you didn't like the player, something like that. Give us your thoughts real quick on the Vikings draft.
Well, overall, I thought the draft was solid. I wouldn't give it an A, but I'd give it a B, B plus. I thought the Vikings addressed some issues, particularly Dalvin Cook. I was not necessarily a fan of the actual pick. I'm a very big fan of Dalvin Cook as a player. I think he's going to be very good as long as he stays healthy and everything. But I don't know. I just didn't think that it would be a good idea to trade up for him after you just signed Latavius Murray in the offseason and you still have Jerick McKinnon. I didn't really see it. I think you should take another running back later in the draft, but I didn't think they would go that high. But I think that the value that the Vikings got from that trade was outstanding because I think a lot of people think he was a top 15 talent. So.
Yeah, no, he absolutely was. I saw something. I was reading somewhere where someone said Latavius Murray is the worst running back to ever get 1,000 yards, or like the most average.
That was me in our group message.
Yes,
I said he was running back to average 2,000 yards over 2 seasons. Because I watched him in Oakland, and I know that if he didn't have arguably the best line in the NFL from left tackle to right guard, that combined left tackle to right guard gave up 1 sack, he would not have had anywhere near those numbers. Like, he had so few broken tackles. He just ran behind this massive offensive line, these massive holes to glory and success. People are like, oh, yeah, he's 6'1", he ran 4.4, he's just great. Like, no, he's not that good. Like, I'm sorry. I think the Cook pick was a fine pick. I would have loved for them to build an offensive line before taking a running back, but I understand why they did it at the very least.
Yeah, no, sorry for stealing that from you, Grant. I don't know
no
if you were
worries,
planning
man.
on
No
saying.
worries.
I just didn't remember where I read it. I think, I mean, you just mentioned, Grant, that you would have liked to see them build their offensive line. I think they got a good start with Pat Elflein in the third round, and that's I guess that's what made me so. We talked about this on the other podcast, but this is what made me so like the Vikings draft so much is they got Dalvin Cook, who's a first round player. He got him in the second. Pat Elflein, who I thought was a second rounder, got him in the third. Jaleel Johnson, who I thought was the second rounder, got him in the fourth. Yeah, in the fourth. So,
Yeah, one thing on the Jaleel Johnson pick, a lot of people didn't understand why the Vikings did that. A lot of people don't realize that Sharif Floyd might not ever play again. And that pick was huge because the Vikings really need a balanced defensive tackle at I believe it's the 5 technique.
The 3 technique.
Or is it the 3? Yeah. Okay, I always get those confused. I'm not scheme knowledgeable. But Jaleel Johnson, as an Iowa Hawkeyes fan, I saw him play a lot, and I've been always very impressed with the things he was able to do on the field. And I think that was a big pick for the Vikings, as much as people try to throw it to the side.
No, I think it was too. So that Vikings defensive front now is going to be really, really impressive, especially if they get Sharif Floyd back. Because at nose tackle, you've got Linval Joseph, who I think is horrendously underrated. I absolutely love Linval Joseph as a player. He's a phenomenal nose tackle. And then off the ends, you're bringing guys like Robeson and Everson Griffin, some really nice Daniel Hunter, thank you. Some really nice edge rushers. But you need to get a pass rusher on the inside. This is what Oakland has struggled with, why they've had so few sacks despite having Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin. You need a player on the interior of your defensive line at the 3 technique, which means they play on the outside shoulder of a guard who can push the pocket and rush the passer from the inside. And so getting a guy like Jaleel Johnson who has great hand usage and is really quick and can get upfield was really important for that defense.
So I'm excited to get to this next topic. We talked a little bit about the defensive player, rookie of the year, and we touched on Mitchell Trubisky earlier. So I'm curious to see who you guys think is going to finish second behind Trubisky in the offensive rookie of the year award, because it's pretty much a given. He was number 2.
Mike Glennon starting. Come on.
Well, Mike Glennon will start, then he loses the job to Trubisky. Trubisky saves it, kind of Prescott-like.
It's like a 7,500-yard season with 44 touchdowns. And this is all assuming that Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, right?
Yeah. Glennon will start the first 8 games. The Bears will go 2-6, and John Fox will be fired, and the interim will put in Trubisky, and they'll finish 4-4.
And they'll ruin Trubisky forever.
Right.
Yep.
Is what's going to happen. And then they're going to say, or there's 2 things that could happen here, right? One, Glennon plays really, 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 really well, and now they've got a problem because they only gave him that 3-year deal, and now he looks like a franchise quarterback, but you just drafted Trubisky. So do you trade Glennon? How do you work that situation? Or Glennon plays terribly and or is hurt, and you throw Trubisky to the dogs, who, like I said, did not know what a hard count was when he went to Gruden's quarterback camp, took 98% of his snaps in college from the shotgun, has no idea how to run a pro-style offense. You're going to ruin him the same way that Tim Couch was ruined in Cleveland 20 years ago, right? So now you're either going to have 2 good quarterbacks or 0 good quarterbacks, in my opinion. Way to go, Bears.
So, look, all I wanted to do is talk about Offensive Rookie of the Year, and now the Bears are going to be a disaster.
Dude, you're a train wreck for the next 10 years. This is how one draft ruins a franchise. I'm just saying, man.
And to Mr. Pace, I say thank you.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, you're welcome. Okay, so is it going to be Leonard Fournette then?
Yeah, well, I
Probably.
think probably Fournette. It seems like he's going into a good situation. Obviously, Blake Bortles is still a big question mark. But, last year, I know I watched a few Jaguars games. I know, but they have talent on their roster. They have, they still have Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns. They don't really have another tight end, though, outside of Mercedes Lewis, which I thought was a bit suspect. But, they have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's just if, Tom Coughlin, which I know he's known for doing, can just get them all motivated. Because, when I watched them last year, it just seemed like half the time they didn't really want to be there. But I think Fournette definitely has a good opportunity to make a huge difference, obviously.
I was kind of worried about Fournette initially because the Jaguars' offensive line is, pretty average, to be honest. And last year they ran a zone scheme. And I thought putting Fournette in a zone scheme would be a really, really bad idea. But they're switching to a power scheme now, which is phenomenal for Fournette. And the thing I touched on earlier when I was talking about Sam Darnold was Bortles' mechanics are really bad. If Bortles can fix his mechanics, his first 2 years, he looked like an NFL starting quarterback. I mean, just last year he was horrendous, but his first 2 years he wasn't bad. And Jacksonville has all that talent on the defensive side of the ball, all that young talent on the defensive side of the ball. So if they can get Bortles around and just have an average offensive line, they could compete for the playoffs. I don't think they will, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I think having maybe I'm just overstating it a bit, but it just seemed like last year no one was listening to Gus Bradley. If Tom Coughlin can, motivate the players, I think they'll be in a good position.
And with Leonard Fournette, the Jaguars also got Cam Robinson, who I know, Grant, you thought could slide into guard and be a top guard in the NFL. So
right.
it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him.
Right. If he plays guard, I think he's a lot like Kelechi Osinbelu, who I absolutely love in Oakland, who's a phenomenal guard prospect. Just massive, huge hands, long arms, just throws people around. I think he can play tackle, honestly. I think people are really underrating him as a tackle. He was kind of inconsistent, but he played better against Garrett and Barnett than he did against lower-tier competition. And that tells me that, Tom Coughlin motivating him, I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. I know Oakland almost took him in the first round. He would have been great value to me outside of the top 20 picks. I thought he would have been a great choice. So I think he'll fit in just fine at guard or tackle in Jacksonville.
Hey, Grant, I got a question for you quick. Christian McCaffrey, what did you think about that fit in Carolina? Because I've heard a lot of people don't like that fit. I guess I'm kind of mixed on it right now. What are your thoughts on it?
So I think Fournette would have been better, and that's clearly what everyone thinks is just that would have been absolutely perfect for Carolina. The thing people don't realize about McCaffrey, people are saying, oh, he's a zone back because he's not very big. Stanford ran a power offense in college. They run a power offense that running backs like Toby Gerhart, more downhill physical runners that come out of. He's going to run a lot of the stuff in Carolina that he ran at Stanford. And if you want to give him the ball out of the backfield, by all means do it, because he's a phenomenal receiver. He's one of the best route runners in this class. He's a running back. So I think that it's actually not that bad of a pick. The more that I think about it and understand that McCaffrey did run power stuff, and he's better between the tackles than people gave him credit for.
My biggest issue is that they took Curtis Samuel in the second.
That was just a trash pick. I called him Curtis Stonehand Samuel because he can't catch the ball. Like, you can run 4.3, congratulations, but in 1 out of every 8 passes thrown to use a drop, I can't trust you as a receiver. Same thing with Will Fuller last year. He had that first really good game, and then everyone said he was a Deshaun Jackson, and then he just tanked because he couldn't catch the football. It's the same thing this year.
Just put him at running back.
Well, they kind of took one of those in the first round, so.
Oh, it's a great dual threat in the backfield, man.
It's just Christian McCaffrey with not good hands.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the Panthers are trying to do, actually, now that I think about it, because I know Kelvin Benjamin showed up overweight to off-season workouts the other day, and now they just basically took 2 running backs / slot receivers. So, I don't really know what they're trying to do. I think I read somewhere that their offensive coordinator, it looks like they're trying to just get them short completions and turn to it's more gadget-style offense to get to help out Cam Newton. But, I'm not really sure entirely what they're going for, because it seems like, they have Greg Olsen, obviously, but they still don't have another good tight end behind him. And then Kelvin Benjamin is sort of just, I don't know what to think about him right now. But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was Kelvin Benjamin had a really good first rookie year, but he's really, because, his second year he tore his ACL, and he just, there are reports that he's overweight, and now he's just, I don't know. I don't think Carolina did anything to address its receiver concerns, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't know if they're trying. It looks like they might be trying to switch things up scheme-wise, but it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, we'll see.
The Browns, obviously, I know we haven't really talked about them, but if the Bears are going to pull a Browns for the next 10 years, then the Browns are no longer going to be a Browns. And they, at least on paper, obviously, they look like they addressed some of their big needs during the draft. I know Peppers is still what positions he's going to play. But Njoku's a good tight end. I'm still a little bit surprised they released Barnage, but they have Njoku. Obviously, they got Garrett. I mean, their front seven looks good with Jamie Collins, Christian Kirksey. They have Agba and Garrett. I know we mentioned before, Danny Shelton. They took who was, I think, Corn Elder at cornerback, and I thought that was a good value pick there for them. And I don't know, it just looked like they got enough picks to the point where they address basically everyone their needs. So if they can put it together, and obviously that's a big if, because I mean I thought they had a good amount of talent last year, and that obviously didn't really work out. And obviously, oh yeah, I forgot to mention they took Kaiser in the second round. So some people are sort of more higher on him than others. Seems sort of like a meh type of pick, but if he can turn out to be at least an above average quarterback, they might have something going there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, as we wrap it up, just real quick, Martinez, who you got? We've seen free agency, we've seen the draft, Super Bowl pick.
Well, I mean, I can't not say the Pittsburgh Steelers. They made it to the AFC Championship game, and then they got J.J. Watt incarnate.
Yeah, well, I cannot say the Pittsburgh Steelers because Bill Belichick's going to win it again. Babcock, who you got?
Yeah, right now it looks like the Patriots. I think it would be. I mean, obviously it's football. Things can change very much, but I mean the Patriots have been really aggressive in free agency, and they already, had a really good Super Bowl winning team that basically ran through the AFC.
Right. Yeah, if you had to put money on somebody, you'd be crazy. I mean, you wouldn't make much money on it, but.
Although I will not rule out the possibility that Christian McCaffrey will break the NFL all-time all-purpose yards record in a season and lead the Panthers to the Super Bowl. So.
To lose to Bill Belichick?
No, they're going to win.
Oh no, that'd be AFC.
Actually, it's going to be a toss-up because you have James White on the Patriots and Christian McCaffrey on the Panthers. So we'll have to see.
Lafayette, who you got?
Well, as you know, I'm Patriots writer, so I have to go Patriots. But I wouldn't be surprised actually, though, if I have to pick another team, if the Giants at least made it to the Super Bowl. And I know it probably sounds weird. Eli Manning's been on a decline, but they have a good defense. Obviously, yeah, they retained Jason Pierre-Paul even, and they retained. Okay, actually, it sounds weird saying out his full name because I just always call him JPP. But anyways, they got Evan Engram. I wasn't really sure what to think about at the time of that pick in the first round, but obviously Sterling Shepard, Odell Beckham Jr., Evan Engram, Brandon Marshall, that's a really, even if Manning's just sort of mediocre right now, that's still a good talent, a good stable of talent they have for receiving core to help him out.
Yeah, Eli's brother was once a very average quarterback with a lot of talent around him that won a Super Bowl, so wouldn't be the first time.
Who is that? Are you talking about Cooper?
Yeah, Cooper, Yeah, the okay. Two-time Super Bowl champion.
Yep.
All right, so Grant and Carson had to jump off. Unfortunately, Carson was only here for like 10 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Do you mind if I just insert one more thing for us all to do? If we just have one to choose, one team each that that you thought won the offseason, I guess. I mean, I guess I can start. Obviously, you can go with the Browns, but I thought the 49ers did a decent job. I mean, obviously, they're still a long time away, but last year it didn't appear that they really had any talent, and at least they have a few playmakers here and there now. Solomon Thomas was a good addition. Not really sure how he fits into their whole 4-3 scheme, but Pierre Garcon's obviously good. And, yeah.
William, you mentioned the Browns. They'd be my pick. A couple years ago, I had Philadelphia 76ers being a team that was going to really vastly improve because they were finally going to get out of rock bottom, and they're starting to do that. I think Cleveland's hit the same place. They've finally dug themselves out of a hole with this offseason.
But the Bears are there to take their place now, apparently.
Well, I mean, somebody's got to do it.
My pick would be the Vikings. Like I said, their draft, I think they got a guy at least one round after where I thought they'd go, and they also were able to shore up their tackles by signing Riley Reif, and I forget the name of the other guy, but he's solid, which is an upgrade for them.
Christian?
Babcock.
Well, if I may in the meantime, then, well, Babcock's doing something unknown to us.
I'm just gonna-
The thing about Dalvin... Oh, okay.
I'm here now.
Here he is.
What is
Okay.
requested of me?
What
Your,
team do you think won the offseason?
Which team won the off season?
Yeah.
As far as building toward eventually being good, or as far as being good next year?
What team had the best offseason?
Had the best off season? Honestly, I think. Oh, that's tough. There's too many teams. I can't pick
Well,
one.
when you think about it, I just want to just throw
Okay,
this
I'll
out
just
there.
say I'll mention one team. I grew up in the Bay, so I paid a good amount of attention to what the 49ers did. I think if Reuben Foster pans out, I know that's somewhat of a big if, but I really liked what they did with Solomon Thomas. And I think John Lynch had a very good first draft, and they've positioned themselves to begin to improve.
Yeah, so I just want to insert one last thing about Dalvin Cook, and I don't want to really get too off topic here, so I'll make it quick. But I think, at least, I actually think I know Cook dropped because of a poor combine, but I get the impression that, he weighed in about 213. I think he actually is probably closer to 195, 200 when he's actually playing, and might even be smaller than Christian McCaffrey. I'm not really sure exactly how much. But I think a lot of it has to do with McCaffrey to some extent being more weight. So you got the whole Wes Welker or whatever comparisons. But I think Cook is definitely going to be a good player. But I just think that there's sort of a, I don't know, disconnect going on there. Maybe. Who knows? Okay.
Yeah.
Right over.
Who knows? So that's going to do it for tonight. Be sure to check out all of our content on armchairallamericans.com. Be sure to check out the other podcast, me, Grant, and Rob.
Rob has a great accent. You should check it out just for that.
Yeah, he's Canadian, so it's pretty great.
Yeah.
We did our final episode of our Dash to the Draft podcast, just kind of wrapping up what we thought about the draft, and it's entirely about the draft. So be sure to check that out. And also be sure to check out and follow the Armchair All-Americans on Twitter at AC All-Americans, as well as Armchair NFL at Armchair NFL. I don't know what our schedule is going to be like going forward. I don't know. We're kind of in the dead of the off season, so I don't know if it's going to be every week or every other week, but we'll figure something out.
We'll just try to get back to you as soon as we can get our host back.
Yeah. In the meantime, subscribe to us on iTunes. Armchair Express podcast, it'll come up, so that way when we do come back, you'll know about it. All right, see ya.
Rather than later, roll on.
Roll Armchair.
Roll Armchair.